in 1988, there was 2,000 evangelicals that became Orthodox. They were led by Peter Gilchrist. These were Campus Crusade folks in the 70s and 80s, and they embarked on a search, and they went back to the church fathers, and they looked at church history, and they decided Orthodoxy was the continuous, the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Yeah. Now in Orthodoxy, you mentioned innovations.
Yes.
One of your guys' tenets, well, I don't want to say it's an official tenet, but from my understanding is that you guys view Orthodoxy as the tradition of the apostles. This was the faith that was passed down from Jesus to the apostles, from the apostles to the church fathers, from church fathers all the way until today. Whereas in other streams, as you rightfully pointed out, there's innovations, and there's, in Catholicism specifically, I think the term you used was doctrinal development, right? So the Second Vatican Council, very different. There's some stuff in there that still has caused I don't want to say a schism, but there's some people that prefer the original Mass, and they're pre-Vatican II Catholics, and they believe that was the last valid Pope, And so, but you got your guys' position is that, hey, we have not had any doctrinal innovations. We have not had doctrinal developments. We have not had these things.
Right. Especially doctrinal developments. Of course, the church is a living tradition, right? A living life. And so, but nothing is newly revealed after the deposit. Well, in the scriptures it says the faith once delivered. And so the revelation is consistent 2,000 years. No new revelation after Christ. So the doctrinal development, it's interesting because there are prominent Roman Catholics who would say Orthodoxy has never innovated. Orthodoxy has remained the same as the first millennium. Pope Ratzinger, Pope Benedict said that, and many others. And in the discussion between Orthodox and Roman Catholics today, they have definitely said that the Orthodox are the same church as the first millennium. So not just the Orthodox, but even Roman Catholics admit that and accept that the Orthodox Church has never innovated doctrinally, or never added, never developed the doctrine. I think it might even be a criticism from some Catholicism. They think that it's perfectly acceptable to recognize in the 19th century papal infallibility, which we do not see anywhere in the first millennium, for instance, or the Immaculate Conception, which, again, the Orthodox Church did not teach doctrinally, has never taught doctrinally that the Mother of God is from the moment of conception without any participation in this reality of mankind, which is post-fall, right? So they see a necessity to make her the great exception. Whereas we say she's the great example for all of us. So there's several doctrines that came very, very late.
Can you unpack the Mary one to me? Because I thought you guys also viewed Mary in a very, very high regard. But what is the distinction there?
Well, it's really a particular theological tradition going back, which wasn't even held by many Roman Catholic post-schism. Like I think Thomas Aquinas, if I'm not mistaken, did not hold to this particular doctrine. So it's a vision, or I don't want to.
Is it that Mary was sinless?
Words in the, I'm not an expert on their position, so I don't want to mischaracterize it. But my understanding is that it is this idea that she has to, from the moment of conception, without any participation in her free will, be exempted from the condition of the fall.
So she was sinless. She was perpetually...
She was sinless, and we would say that she never committed personally, consciously a sin, but she was a part of this condition of Adam. And so the idea that before her life, there was no possibility, it basically, we would say that robs her of all her greatness, because the greatness is that you're able to and you don't, not that you could never, right? So it's a very different vision of, and I think it also points to the problem in the West. We see a major problem in the West with the whole question of what we say in Greek, autoxousia, which is the self-determination or the free will of man. For instance, Calvinism is the most extreme example for us as Orthodox in the West, that they're very mistaken about the role of the free will of each individual. But that also has roots in some of the teachings in the Scholastics and back to Augustine. So there's a lot there. We could go on for hours. But so there's the main thing I want to point out is that the Orthodox Church does not and cannot embrace the idea that you can declare a doctrine which was never declared for the first millennium in the 19th century as if it always was lived, especially infallibility. Infallibility was, is clearly not present in the first millennium.
Did you guys view the Bishop of Rome as being kind of like a first among equals. Is that a fair?
Yeah, that's
way?
a phrase that we use,
Okay.
we have no problem using that phrase.
Okay.
If it's an Orthodox bishop, teaches Orthodox faith, then there's a function or a role that is definitely accepted. That does not imply personal infallibility in the least, let alone primacy over the entire church. Well, it's really, really important to understand we did a whole conference on this, and we produced the acts of this council, the Eighth Ecumenical Council. After the Seventh, there was an Eighth Ecumenical Council accepted by the whole Christian world in the 9th century, in 879 in Constantinople, under Patriarch St. Photios the Great, one of the greatest Christian theologians in the history of the church. And they had basically a short break in communion between Rome and Constantinople that was resolved in 879 in Constantinople. And there they decreed that there be no addition whatsoever to the Nicene Constantinople Creed with regard to, there'd be no addition, and that was agreed to universally. And then 150 years later, the Pope unilaterally added to the creed, the Confession of our Faith, the so-called filioque, the I and the Son. So if you don't understand that council and how that was accepted and then what happened in the early 11th century, you'll never understand the schism. Schism will remain. And people talk about the schism. They say, well, there was a bishop of Constantinople that anathematized the Pope in Rome, and they had a squabble, and it was over papal primacy. No, it's not true at all. Actually, the reason why the Orthodox immediately reacted and said, the Pope has fallen is because they had agreed to the faith once delivered from the First Ecumenical Council to the Eighth, and they had agreed that there could be no addition to this, and then they went back on it.
So
they
this is the real reason for the big Great Schism of 1050.
And there was never an Orthodox council to determine that because they walked away from the council they themselves had accepted, and so they basically fall under their own condemnation. Like their fathers, their previous popes had said, "This is the faith, and we must not add to it," and then they added to it under political pressure.